The Tar Heels have made the cut for yet another high school recruit, landing in the top 5 for 2025's Nik Khamenia. But can they get over the top this time?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, August 19th, 2024. It's the first day of class, so happy first day of school to all you UNC students out there tuning in. Man, hope it's a great semester for all of you. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch, and send a special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community. We'd love to have you join us there. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, going to be a fun show to kick off the week. We're talking about Nik Khamenia, a forward in the class of 2025 who has cut down his list to a top 5. You know who's in there. We also got some news over the weekend that apparently Carolina's not going to put out their depth chart for their first game next week. I'll tell you why. Clemson, Florida State, staying in the ACC for at least another year. And as I said, it's the first day of class. I just want to share some stuff about that and a look ahead to the year that it could be. So all of that coming up, but we start with Nik Khamenia out of California, who on Friday tweeted out his top 5 schools. And I'll tell you right now, folks, it is a bi-coastal list. This West Coast young man has 3 schools from the West Coast and 2 East Coast schools that are within a couple miles of each other. So those 5 schools: Gonzaga, UCLA, and Arizona. There's your West Coast contingent. And then Carolina and Duke. That's your East Coast contingent. We actually talked about this on Locked On College Basketball today as well, and we joked that apparently Khamenia has zero desire to live anywhere in Middle America. He's a coastal dude, and I can't blame him. So those are your 5 schools that it's ultimately going to come down to. What's the skinny on Nik Khamenia as of right now? As I said, he's a West Coast kid, lives in Studio City, California, plays at Harvard Westlake High School out there. So to that point, you probably wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Arizona or Gonzaga or UCLA as the landing spot. But as you well know, both Carolina and Duke are these national brands that can draw people from all over, not just the country, but the world, just because of their appeal. So, and in a day and age when geographical stuff's dying away even more so, it's like, well, I'm not, let's not just concede it. If he's somebody you want, go get it. Khamenia is 6'7", 6'8", depending on where you look. Also, depending on where you look, small forward or power forward. So, I don't know why we've never really thought about this. When there's a guy that's kind of a point guard, kind of a shooting guard, what do we call him? Combo guard. When there's a guy like this that's kind of a small forward, kind of a power forward, you guessed it, I'm going to call him a combo forward. So that's my positional designation for Nik Khamenia. I hope you're down with that. It looks weird to write it down. CF looks like center fielder, and I'm a baseball guy, so there you go. Man, really intrigued by Khamenia and his game. Solid family background who are kind of all in this thing together. He's the 28th consensus player, at least when you look at On3's reporting of it, at the 4 major recruiting sites. If you're unaware, there are 4 major sites we use in college basketball. That's 247, it's Rivals, it's ESPN, and On3. He's as high as, as well rated as 29th, and as worst ranked as 40th and 31st and 34th in between. 247 is the highest, Rivals is the lowest. Khamenia played for the FIBA Under-18 AmeriCup in that tournament this summer down in Buenos Aires. I think that's how you say that, right? No, it's not Buenos Aires. That sounds so like, oh boy, you're a hick. Buenos Aires, I think is right, down in Argentina. Anyway, that was back in June. 6 games, Khamenia averaged 7.7 points, 6.3 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and a block, shot 38.5% from 3. Obviously, as is so true of these types of little mini tournaments, it's such a small sample size that you can't take a ton away, but keep in mind when you're playing with the best talent in the world, it's almost often more telling. Best talent in the world your age, I guess I should say. It's almost more telling than what you do in high school because you're playing with other awesome basketball players. So there's that. Also, as we think about who might have the lead in this race, the head coach of that team, Tommy Lloyd. If you don't recognize that name, it's because he's just a few years into being a head coach, and he's the head coach at Arizona. So there is that side of things with Khamenia, so we'll have to see how that comes out. Now, he is a highly skilled basketball player, Khamenia is. Can do a lot, high IQ, but he's not the guy that's going to out-athlete you, right? It's not like a Seth Trimble type of guy. It's not a Jalen Withers type of guy. It's a guy who's going to out-basketball you, if I can put it that way, as opposed to out-athlete you. I love his passing. I mean, just really good vision. I've seen him throw some nice passes, but he processes well. He makes good decisions. I like his shot. It's smooth. Seems to me to have good range on it from what I've been able to watch of Khamenia. And so I like what he could bring almost in a Harrison Ingram sort of way or a Brady Manick sort of way. And those obviously aren't the same players, but they could fit into that same role as the 4. And when you think about it, we've seen that type, like this is in the same way that we're talking about the potential of Cade Tyson playing the 4 for Carolina this year. And we're seeing it at other places to high levels of success, right? This is the role that we're seeing at UConn for the past 2 years. This is the role we saw at Gonzaga the year they lost to Baylor in the national championship with Corey Kispert that year. I can't even think. Why am I not thinking of the UConn kid's name that was in the draft anyway and decided to come back? It's just not hitting me. I can see his face, but it's not sticking. So you're probably all yelling it out at me. But anyway, same kind of idea that Cade Tyson could play this year, that Nik Khamenia could play on down the stretch. Now, in terms of visits with these 5 schools, he's going to Arizona at the end of the month here, August 30th and 31st. We'll be at Carolina September 6th, Duke September 13th. This is all from On3's reporting on it. Don't see anything yet about a visit scheduled for UCLA, so we'll keep our eyes on that. He has visited Gonzaga before, and I can't remember if it was official or unofficial. Again, as a reminder, if it was unofficial, he could still take an official visit. If it was an official visit previously, he could still go back to Gonzaga, but it'd have to be unofficial because there's not been a coaching change. So keep that in mind. On UNC, Khamenia says this about kind of the relationship that he's been growing with the coaches, and he directly says just about what they've talked about with his game. Quote, "They love my versatility and the way I play the game and see me as a guy that could thrive in their system and grow my game," end quote. And that's exactly what I was just talking about. His skill set seems to make a ton of sense for being a big 3 or a small ball 4 for Carolina. And they've exhibited the ability to do that with his type of skill set and his type of size. I think Cade Tyson's year is going to be very telling of how a player like Khamenia could fit in for Carolina. Now, keep in mind, the Tar Heels still have no commits yet in the class of 2025. And not that they're behind. There's not been a ton off the board, but it's just you'd like to get one off the board. I know the Jasper Johnson commitment is coming up soon. At this point, our best understanding is that it's a toss-up between us and Alabama. Kentucky's role in this has ebbed and flowed. It's hard to know, but he's a Lexington kid initially, even though he played at Link. And then now he's at OTE. So we just don't know. But it'd be nice at some point to land a class of 2025 guy. And then, Coach Davis has all of these offers out in the class of 25. Obviously, you can't take all of those. And you probably don't. I mean, I'm just really curious to see how many high schoolers in the class of 25 the Tar Heels are actually going to not try to land, but want to land. I'm really curious how they're going to continue balancing recruiting out of high school and recruiting out of the portal, and what is that blend? So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. But right now, we're looking at Nik Khamenia. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on any more announcements. That visit coming up not too long from now. I believe that is the weekend after Labor Day. So we're just about 3 weeks away from his visit to Carolina. Now, let's move from basketball to football because we are less than 2 weeks away from Carolina's first football game next Thursday night. The biggest UNC football question this offseason has been, we all know it, who replaces Drake Maye? Is it Connor Harrell? Is it Max Johnson? Heck, could it be the guy that Drake Maye beat out in Jacoby Criswell? Well, now it appears that we're going to have to wait until the very first snap of Carolina's offensive season to find out. Why? I'll tell you that answer coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel this offseason, America's #1 sports book. And usually this summer, it's been, hey, FanDuel's filling you in with giving you a boost or bonus every day this summer. Well, now I've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. How about some football odds while we're talking football? Carolina next Thursday night at Minnesota. Minnesota's favored by 2.5 in this game. Let's go up and not just cover that spread, but just beat them straight up, right? Got to get that win. And then, you're looking for something this weekend. We've got a ranked team in action and an ACC game. Oh, by the way, number 10 FSU visits Georgia Tech on Saturday at noon Eastern. Noles favored by 11.5. You and I know, being Carolina people, there's that Atlanta Magic. And so Seminoles better watch out. If you want to get in on that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks again for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen of the day. For your second listen, let me encourage you to go enjoy Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, our buddy who gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL, new college football, expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, football. Y'all. Oh, by the way, I just remembered that UConn player's name I was trying to think of. Alex Caravan, right? Same kind of role. Anyway, football. You remember this time 2 years ago, Drake Maye versus Jacoby Criswell. And we had to wait until game week to get the initial depth chart to learn that Drake Maye was going to be named the starter. And then we knew, and the rest is history. Now he's in New England, right? Well, good news, we don't have to wait on that same timeline. Bad news, we have to wait longer. We're not going to know, apparently, who the starting quarterback is until the offense takes the field for the first time next Thursday night in Minnesota. Why? Because apparently the Golden Gophers aren't putting out a depth chart. And so guess what? Understandably so, neither are the Tar Heels, according to Coach Mac Brown this past weekend. So I was like, what on earth gives here? So I did some studying up. I went deep dive on this thing. I went into the Minnesota message boards and just started reading. Well, apparently, Coach PJ Fleck, and I somehow either didn't know this or maybe it's not a big thing that a lot of people know. I don't know. I didn't realize it. But he's one of these guys that's not going to tell you anything he doesn't have to. You know, we know some NFL franchises like that. They're only going to give you exactly and specifically what they have to give you. So Fleck's the kind of guy, from what I've read in these message boards, that releases any info that he has to give and just basically nothing else beyond that. So in this instance, he's not required to release a depth chart, so he's not going to. guarded about injury updates, not going to say anything basically until that required 2 hours before kickoff, and then he'll release the injury report. So long and short of it, if the Big Ten or NCAA or whomever isn't going to mandate it, Flick ain't going to do it. And so thusly, we don't have a depth chart for either team yet. Awesome. Thanks, Minnesota. Appreciate you. Now, here's my curiosity with this thing. Is this not to Minnesota's competitive disadvantage? For example, we already know that Minnesota has named Max Brosmer, I don't know yet, the grad transfer from New Hampshire as QB1 and a captain for this team. So the Tar Heels know what quarterback they're preparing for. Now, they're going to make sure they know what's up with the other guys, but they can hone in on Brosmer. I'm going to say Brosmer. I like that better. But on the Carolina side of things, if you're Minnesota, you don't know which quarterback to prep for. And it's not one of those situations where they're interchangeable. It's not like two versions of Peyton Manning where it's like, oh, this dude's going to sit in the pocket and try to pick us apart. You got Connor Harrell and you got Max Johnson. And not that they're like wildly, completely polar opposite different quarterbacks. They're definitely not the same quarterback, which is to Carolina's competitive advantage, especially if we don't have to tell you which one of them we're going to utilize more in this game. So, and again, it's not going to be Jacoby Criswell. It sounds like it's going to be Max Johnson over Connor Harrell, but you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen over the next week or week and a half on the field, off the field, anything else. So to me, that's check for Carolina, right? And on the other side of the ball, both teams have a new defensive coordinator right now. So I think that both defenses or perhaps both offenses are at an equally weird and off-putting competitive disadvantage. Minnesota's new DC is Corey Heatherman. Obviously, Jeff Collins, the former Georgia Tech head coach at Carolina as the DC. So there you go. It's a kind of annoying situation because this is one of my favorite things to do over these last couple of weeks is like scour over the final depth chart and see what to expect when the game comes. So we'll get there eventually, but it sounds like it ain't going to be till kickoff. Now, speaking of the depth chart, Carolina had kind of a close scrimmage this weekend. There's a little bit of information that's come out, but media wasn't allowed. So that's part of why we don't know a ton. But apparently it was about 80 snaps and that the coaching staff was going to really work on what they saw on the field Saturday and then going back and looking at the tape and then really cementing and honing in on the depth chart following that. So we'll keep an eye on this. We'll see what, if anything, transpires. Do we get any leaks on some of the depth chart stuff? If not, we're all going to be finding out together in real time next Thursday evening. Cannot wait to get there. Oh, by the way, and another wrinkle in this whole thing is that game one is so critical, especially in this year for Carolina. Like, I think back 3 years ago now, Sam Howell's final year, Carolina starts the season at Virginia Tech on a Friday night. You remember that place was bumping to Enter Sandman. I mean, they were going crazy town. Carolina's offense can't ever really get going. Virginia Tech wins. We cannot have that this year. This game is so important for so many reasons. You're replacing the best, if not one of the best quarterbacks in program history. You've got a team that basically is uncertain all across the board for, yes, internally of figuring out where do the pieces actually fit, but also for us trying to cover it and figure this out. Trying to figure out what are these pieces. Also because you just want to get off on a good note. That season where Carolina lost to Virginia Tech, it just felt like they never really had any kind of mojo going after that. Another thing is that after this game at Minnesota, there are 3 very winnable games after that, hosting Charlotte, North Carolina Central, and James Madison. So lock this one up, make it happen. All right. Obviously, we'll talk a lot more about that this week and up through next week as we get ready for that first game. Quickly, in other ACC news, not football specific, just sports in general, Clemson and Florida State had until last Friday to notify the conference that they plan to leave for next year, 2025-26. They did not do that. And so, unless some of this legal stuff, crops up something different or a different plan or whatever it is, we've got at least 2 more years of both Clemson and Florida State being in the conference. Because the thing here is that the ACC Constitution stipulates that teams, that schools have to notify the conference by the deadline of August 15th every year if they intend to leave the next year. That was Friday. It's come and gone. So there's where we sit. All right. Coming up in just a second. Today, as I said, is the first day of class at North Carolina. And man, there's a lot of hope ahead for this season on all the various fields of play. I just want to talk about that, and let's dream a little bit together, all right? Come join me. We'll do that in just a second. Right after I tell you about eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your million for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Why? Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's only available to U.S. customers. The first day. It's the first day of not only class, but the 2024-25 academic year. And that means it's the first day where we really just start dreaming about this year ahead. I know we had a women's soccer match last Thursday night. Let's go. But this is really it. This is really what kicks it off for most people. I think I'm also feeling this a little bit. It's my kid's first day of class. Here in Missouri, where I live, my son is going into 3rd grade, and then just really sappy day for me as a dad because my youngest, my daughter, starts kindergarten today. This little tiny, precious girl is somehow old enough to go to kindergarten. And as I think about these college students starting today, many of them freshmen, it is a cruel reminder of how time is a thief, as my wife said it on Sunday. And before I know it, she's going to be a freshman going somewhere. And that is, I'm thrilled and I can't wait for that. But it's mind-boggling. So the first thing I want to say here as we think about the upcoming year is savor every moment. I feel like I say things like this a lot to us on the podcast, but it's just something I want to remind us regularly. Like I don't mind that I say that regularly. A, because these moments come and are gone before you know it. And then B, you never know, especially at a place like Carolina, when you're going to witness history or be part of history or, just something of that nature. And so soak it in and take every moment. Because one of the things I feel like I notice is as soon as you realize how much you appreciate a team, it's done and gone and over. Whether it's the Diamond Heels run to the College World Series last year, and then it's just done. Carolina loses to Tennessee and Florida State, and that's it, and that's all. The basketball team last year, man, it was just the men's basketball team was such a special, fun, unique, together group. And if I'm being very honest, I thought they were going to take care of Alabama. They didn't, and then it was done and over. That was it. No more Armando Bacot. It was gone. And so Now, as we're on the other side of that, the front end of that equation, I want to soak it in, man. I want to be ready for everything that's ahead. I love the fresh school year. It's full of hope. It's full of possibility. It's full of wonder at what could be. That's the joy of being a fan. Some teams coming into this season, you hope they can build on success that they had last year. The other teams had real struggles last year, and you hope they can turn things around this year, whether it's a coach 1 year wiser, whether it's players who have changed their bodies over the offseason and are just a different caliber athlete now, because whatever it is. The joy of being a fan and of being a fan is the anticipation of the unknown. What's to come? We don't know. It could be a great year. It could be a really difficult year. Somewhere in between, and maybe some of both, all within the same year. Who's going to take us on a ride this season? What player, what team is going to have one of just those special moments that we will see on every Carolina highlight for the next decades? Who's that going to be? Who's going to create that next Tar Heel memory for all of us? And that's the wild things about sport, is it could just be a random Tuesday night and something crazy happens. Like last year, a random Monday night against Miami in the Dean Dome. RJ Davis scores more points in that building than anyone else ever has for Carolina. I mean, that's sports, man. And that's what makes it so fun of a ride to go on. But also, look, you all know me. I'm an eternal optimist. But we got to recognize there's going to be some heartaches. Where are they going to come from? Is it a team we thought was going to be very, very special, and then it just didn't work? Is it an injury to a beloved player? Is it, man, who knows where the heartaches are going to be, but there will be heartaches, just like there will be victories. We know that the pain of defeat is going to come, but we forge on because it's always going to be worth it, right? We just keep coming back again and again and again, and that's what it means to be a fan, and that's just part of why we love all of these great varsity athletics at North Carolina. Will we as fans this year allow ourselves to be open to the possibilities, or will we hedge our bets as fans because we don't want to open up our heart and get hurt or burned? I'm going to choose to open my heart up and hope that big things happen. Let's think about some individual sports. Will football have another hot start for a third year in a row, but finish better this year? Again, I'm the eternal optimist, and while those last 2 years have taught me to expect that things are going to fall off, man, that's the joy of being a fan. Next year, next play, next game. What's the first year after Drake Maye going to be like? Let's just keep going down through sports. Will Erin Matson start off her coaching career, her very young coaching career, with back-to-back national championships for women's field hockey? Despite Carolina men's basketball's struggles to land a front court player this offseason, at least of an elite caliber, will they do things in a new way that cause us to fall in love with the Tar Heels all over again for different types of reasons? What will year 4 for Hubert Davis have in store? Will the women's basketball team be able to overcome the injury-riddled season they have last year and the frustration of it and just have a monster year this year? Can men's golf finally get over the hump and win the national championship like women's tennis did a couple seasons ago? Speaking of women's tennis, man, they just lost a truckload of this most recent generation of Tar Heels. Will we see the next generation rise up and carry this thing at a very, very high level like we had seen their predecessors? Anson Dorrance literally just retired from the greatest under-the-radar sports dynasty we've known, the Carolina women's soccer team. How are they going to fare in his immediate absence? Can the Diamond Heels string together back-to-back College World Series appearances like they did last year, despite losing perhaps the best outfielder in Carolina's baseball history? How do they replace Vance Honeycutt? How do they, who is that bullpen arm to replace Dalton Pence next year? Can Parker Wolf build on his insane 2023-24, which included the national championship in the 5K and coming this close to making the Olympic team for America? Will Aranza Vazquez Montano win a third straight national championship in both the 1 meter and 3 meter springboard next spring? All of these and more. There's so many incredible storylines to think about, and they're all going to unfold over the course of the 2024-25 season, academic year, whatever it is. The bottom line for you and for me is this: we keep coming back again and again and again, because literally anything can happen in sport, and we want to be amazed. We want to be wowed. We want to be made to feel something, whether it's good or bad. Man, it's just great to be a part of it. The highest of highs and the lowest of lows, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. I would encourage you, try out a new Carolina sport this year that you've never really invested in. Support a Tar Heel squad that you've never really, maybe you don't know much about the sport or the team or whatever. And how fun would it be to just go on a ride with them? Learn more about specific student athletes, their background, who they are, just because that's what it's all about. Yes, we love the sports, but it's about these stories, man, and what makes it all up. And what I want to remind you right now is something that I remind you at the end of every show, that come what may this academic year, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. So if you haven't subscribed to the Locked On Tar Heels podcast on video and audio, go ahead and do that right now so that you don't miss a second of this thrill ride of an academic year. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, we'd love to have you. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. You know it. And again, let me say it one more time. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Be right back with you tomorrow. But until then, peace.